a trauma workshop. We almost done, y'all. We got this week, and then next week is the last week. And then after that, we will be going on a 3-week vacation, per se. Well, y'all get a break from us for 3 weeks, but we'll still be working behind the scenes, trying to work out some things for y'all. Right now, we are looking to do some things for y'all, but right now we're just behind the scenes right now, finalizing things. I just put in y'all orders for new shirts and polos for this 2020-2021 program year. So without further ado, tonight's session is gonna be a little bit different. I'm doing it today. There's no special guest. It's just me. So, but we're gonna watch 2 different videos, and after they are done, we're gonna talk briefly about what you took from the videos. So, go ahead and share my screen. As y'all see, my computer is very busy because I stay working. So, all right, here is the first one.
When you look at me, what do you see? Now, to the very astute, I usually get I'm black, I'm bearded, and I'm strong. I also get I look like NBA superstar James Harden. I'm most definitely the poor version. I get hip hop superstar, Emmy Award winner, Donald Glover, AKA Childish Gambino. Yeah, that too, right? And last but not least, I get Curtis Jackson, AKA 50 Cent. Now, one of my goals is definitely to get rich or die trying. I think Sally Mae is putting the emphasis on or die trying, right? But see, what I don't hear is Phil, you look like somebody that lives with depression and anxiety. Phil, you look like somebody that was suicidal for 15 years, every day, 5 to 6 times a day. They don't say, Phil, you look like somebody that was driving on Interstate 95, wanting to crash your car to end your life. No. Because see, here in America, when we think about mental health, we think about the homeless man who's walking the streets, talking nonsensically to himself. We think about the white celebrity who takes their life via suicide. We think about the white mass murderer who goes into a high school and takes the lives of innocent children. Or it's usually your president who loves to tweet venom from the hip. But see, rarely does the conversation speak of a father of 2 kids, someone who possesses a master's in exercise science, a master's in social work, somebody pursuing a doctorate. Rarely is it a person of color. Rarely is it a black man like myself until now, because black mental health matters. Now you may be asking yourself, what is black mental health and why is it differentiated amongst racial and ethnic lines? Black mental health are the individual and collective experiences that influence the wellness of a community. Trauma is the biggest influencer of black mental health. We're talking about historical trauma, slavery, Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, the Tuskegee experiment, up until present day trauma. When you see somebody that looks like you get killed in their home, rest in peace, Bosom Jean. When you see somebody who's living with mental wellness issues get killed by the police, rest in peace, Laquan McDonald of Chicago, Illinois. Or when you see somebody that looks like you get killed by somebody that looks like you, rest in peace, Triple X, Tentacion. See, when we talk about trauma, trauma is unique to the individual, and I'm no different. Impactful situations that I've experienced in my life outside of the genetic predisposition, because my grandmother lived with schizophrenia. I harken back to being in 8th grade, 13 years of age, on the way to school. My mother has a nervous breakdown. She's crying. She's pulling at her clothes and her hair. She's cursing. I felt helpless because I couldn't help her, or I couldn't help myself. And see, I was expected to continue to go into school that day and achieve. It's funny, when I first started telling this story, I told my mother, listen, I'm telling the story of when he had a nervous breakdown. And she said, so that didn't happen. Now, I know I'm getting older. I have a few grays, right? But I swear I remember that. And then she called me a week later and she said, Phil, I didn't know you remembered that. As if I wouldn't remember the most traumatic situations that I've experienced in my life. And that typically happens. We're often expected to just continue on because we are so resilient as a people, because we do survive, and we survive for hundreds of years. And I was supposed to survive and go into school that day and perform. And I did, because like many of us, I learned how to suppress my emotions and my feelings. But what if I didn't? What if I went into school and I started arguing with peers and fighting? What if I started arguing with the teachers? What if I did criminalistic behaviors within the community? Would I be deemed incorrigible and unable to be in the school setting, in the community setting? Or would anybody care that I just experienced this traumatic situation that has impacted me? Fast forward to my 12th grade year, 17 years of age, January 2001. My mother said, Phil, come downstairs. She said, Phil, your brother Bobby died. And I started crying. That was probably the only healthy coping skill that I had at the time, right? Because being a product of the hip hop culture, hip hop tells me when somebody dies, you either go out and get some liquor or you go get a rest in peace tattoo. Well, I wasn't old enough to drink. That would happen once I got to college, right? But I went out and I got this rest in peace tattoo. As if that was going to do something, if that was going to take away the pain of losing a primary relationship. It didn't. And people ask me, Phil, well, how did your brother die? Say, the opioid epidemic is popular now. But in the Black community, in the hip hop community, especially amongst Black male, it's always existed. He was one who liked to use codeine and Xanax. I don't know what he was trying to cope with. I will never know. I went to school that Monday because I didn't have anybody to say, Phil, stay home. Because my mother was going through it because she just lost her only child. And I went to school feeling all of this emotion. And I remember it like yesterday. I was sitting in computer class. Miss Williams, my computer teacher, came up to me. And I don't know what she said. She said, Phil. She could have said, Phil, what was the score of the Eagles game last night? I let her have it. I laughed on her. I cursed her out. Why? Because I had all this built up anger, all this built up rage. Because see, when we're talking about depression and anxiety for Black men especially, it doesn't look like somebody laying in bed for 6 and 7 days on end. No, it manifests itself through anger and rage. I ended up getting suspended that day. And Ms. Williams and I were able to laugh at the situation years later because I was able to cope with it and understand what I was feeling. But again, it was a moment in time that impacted my life. My third and final story happened at Bloomsburg University in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. Again, we remember traumatic situations, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I call it the Jew story, right? Because when I go fill out job applications and it says, have you ever been convicted of a crime? As long as it doesn't say misdemeanor or felony, I can ignore it if it says that. But if it says, have you ever been convicted of a crime, I have to check it off. And then I'll put, well, it all started with a cup of juice. And then the employers, they laugh like, oh man. And I laugh like, ha, ha, ha. That's my life. So the true story is, I was coming from the gym to go get me something to eat. I got my food. I paid for it. Emphasis on pay. And you know how you go to McDonald's, they give you a cup and you can go to the fountain and get whatever drink you want. And I did that, and I tasted it to see if it was watered down. But see, when you go to a predominantly white institution like Bloomsburg University, it seems like they have all the minorities' names on a list. And the school police officer said, Phil, that's stealing. Mind blown. And me having this anger, this frustration that's built up over years of trauma, and me not being able to express myself in a healthy way, I blacked on her just like I did Miss Williams. Unbeknownst to me, that would lead to 20 plus charges. I ended up going to jail that night. I ended up getting expelled from school. I ended up doing a weekend in jail because, listen, they say you'll get judged by a jury of your peers. With the average age in that community being 60 and over, it wasn't going to be a jury of my peers. But I needed that experience. I needed it. And I needed it because it told me that, so I have to do something different. I ended up appealing to get back into Bloomsburg University, and people knew me, so people wanted me back. And so I got back, and I was focused. One day, my psychology professor, Dr. Cambone Camara, God bless the dead, he said, Phil, come talk to me about anything, anytime. And I took him up on that. I went and talked to him, not to talk about school. I went to talk to him about a young lady I had been courting, right? And I wanted to understand, why did she want me? So I went to his office. I'm like, listen, I bought her sneakers. I took her to the movies. I took her to dinner. Well, my mom took her to dinner and all those things because I didn't have a job. Thanks, Mom. But he said to me, Phil, in life, you change to get something or to keep something. What are you talking about? Little did I know that would become go to therapy every week. Hi, Dr. Val. It's been so critical for me in my wellness because I decided to go from living to thriving. To my Black brothers and sisters, you too deserve to go from living to thriving. We no longer have to wear the mask. We're survivors. There's help now. We can get help and walk out there with our heads held high and get the treatment that we need so we can go from living to thriving. To my non-Black brothers and sisters, will you now view the Black person that you come in contact with and might be in a negative way and recognize that, you know what, they might have gone through something, or to see them when they excel, what they had to go through to get to that point? Or will mental health continue to be viewed in America as Kate Spade, as Anthony Bourdain, as Chester Bennington, as Robin Williams? Would it now include actors Sam Sarpong, Lee Thompson Young? Will it now include 10-year-old Ashanti Davis, who took her life because of bullying? Would now represent Emmanuel Sloan, who's the reason why I'm here, because at 19 years of age, he decided to take his life by jumping in front of a train. This isn't an indictment on you or on America. This is just a public service announcement that's stating that we're here and we deserve to live and to thrive. Thank you.
All right, so now after watching that first video, so Tyrell, what do you think about what the message he was conveying? His name is Philip Roundtree.
It sound like he was talking about how mental health issues in America's society matters and how he went through it and his family.
All right, Tyler, what did you get from the video?
Like not judge a book by its cover, or like not go for the cliche answer, you know, like what the common black man goes through, or like what you see, or like, you know, don't jump to conclusions. Like consider what a person may have gone through to get to the position that they're in versus you, where you were possibly handed that position. So just be aware, keep like an open mind. That's what I got from it. Hello?
All right, Jay, what did you get from the video? Jaynald, what did you get from the video?
Oh, my bad. Oh, crap. Wait. I think is he frozen?
You was able to hear the video?
I
All right. All right, so pretty much the video from what Philip was displaying was about when it comes to mental health.
Okay, my bad.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
just crashed the call. I mean, yeah, meeting. So what was your question again?
What did you get from the video?
About how about how about his depression and how he wanted more people to care
Okay.
by bringing up a public announcement
Okay.
and sharing his story about him and some other people.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Who else is missing? So like I said, all your answers were correct. So here was my take watching the video. His first at the end, what kind of was moving was he talked about how instead of mental health looking at it from the lens of only we seeing it from our counterparts from white people only gets announced for having mental health issues. Now let's add African American names attached to that list. So, you know, because quiet as kept, mental health has always been in the perception of, oh, that is white people issues. We as black people, we don't have those issues. but we're sadly mistaken because we carry so much trauma and we deal with a lot of things on a day-to-day basis that everybody has their own story. So that was the lesson I got from watching the video is, now let's add African American names to the conversation in regards to mental health. Not only seeing it as a white issue, but seeing it as a universal issue. So that was, good job, y'all, for, watching. So now I'm getting ready to do the second video. Get ready to share my screen. All right.
Until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance.
Brixton, the heartbeat of Black Britain and one of the most celebrated parts of the UK. It's also where I was born and raised, but there's an ugly and often tragic reality that extends across the country. And that's if you're a black man, you're around 10 times more likely than a white man to have experienced a psychotic disorder in the last year.
I think for me, exercise and physical activity was a big part of my recovery.
Eshe Igbonu has bipolar disorder. He's 27, and 3 years ago, his mental health reached crisis point.
There were certain things that I was doing that were erratic in terms of my behavior and very impulsive. So every emotion I'm feeling is heightened. So when I'm happy, euphoric. When I'm angry, I feel that I've been aggrieved. Then there's this type of energy that's bubbling up that needs to manifest somehow. And so that would lead to certain confrontations, whether they're at work or in the home situation. And tensions began to brew.
Eshe's mental state caused a breakdown in relations with his family. He says they had no choice but to call the authorities. He ended up being sectioned twice in the Mental Health Act. The second time he left hospital, but without permission.
Walked home thinking we could just move on and put this behind us. But a couple hours later, the police were called. They came to the household, knock, knock. And the first time I was compliant, but this time I was defiant. Officer said, you have to go back. And then there was a physical struggle. They tried to get me down. I wasn't having it. And so once that failed, the next course of action, of course, was the taser. 50,000 volts. The muscles just collapsed on the floor, back in the handcuffs, driving back to the hospital.
Eshe says he understands why he ended up being restrained, but it frustrates him that it had to get to that stage. Black people are 4 times more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act, and all too often, that's their first encounter with the system.
The point at which they enter is at that point of crisis, at that point of emergency, which then reflects in the number of sections that are used. So what is happening before that is the key point.
These fears are something that psychotherapist Bafal Ababio hears too often. He works with black men and says there's a wider problem. As soon as black men enter the psychiatric services, more often than not, they receive the most extreme forms of treatment.
The treatment options are the section and also heavy dosages of drugs and being locked up in locked sections of hospitals and special hospitals, and physical treatments such as electroconvulsive therapy independently of their diagnosis.
Because I'm paranoid. I keep looking over my shoulder, people around town.
He says the way black men are treated in the mental health system is a problem with historic roots. Among them are discrimination and deprivation. So too the impact of migration, generations of black men who didn't fully assimilate into a society many of them felt excluded from. Good morning, Mike. How you doing? Michael Flowers came to the UK from Jamaica over 50 years ago.
Clash of cultures, misunderstanding, and fear as well. Fear of the black man.
Okay. What do you mean by fear of the black man?
It's like an individual thing. It's something that I've experienced myself growing up in the community. I'm not coming in the 60s. You know, like a man of my size and my stature, you know, feeling erratic and getting ill, and it would look like I'm being violent to someone that doesn't understand.
That lack of understanding and the disconnect and tension between the black community and the authorities, he says, made it impossible to reach out for help with his mental health.
Interacting with, I can say, the police, because to me at those times the police was representing the system, so, you know what I mean? And it was difficult in time to even approach somebody in certain authorities to really express yourself.
It's only recently Michael has felt comfortable talking about his problems with depression. The big reason for that, he says, is attending this centre in Lambeth and being in a community of people who can identify with his struggles. Members are helped to build confidence and skills whilst getting support in a non-clinical setting.
And do you remember what it was that you were particularly struggling with?
Hearing voices that torments me. Sometimes get all these imaginative thoughts that always it comes every day and it never stops. It's ongoing. Anyone can experience mental health problems. It's like it's a stigma that affects everyone personally. It affects how they feel within themselves, how they interact, how they behave.
What is it about here at the clubhouse that works for so many people in this borough?
It's a good community where people can find work and volunteer and work.
Around half the members here at the Mosaic Clubhouse are black. Reflecting the community is a key part of its success.
People come here and something sparks, something's familiar to them. So the staff are local people. The staff are all non-clinical people who've had interesting lives and done interesting things. So I think people just feel it's a community that they can fit into. It's human beings being kind to human beings. I don't know what it's like, obviously, to be a young black man, but I do know what it's like to hurt and to feel pain and to feel lonely and isolated.
The work on the ground within Lambeth is significant. Local councillor Jackie Dyer feels one of the key reasons black men are being failed is because members of the community aren't being involved in the decisions affecting them. She's also an advisor to government and defiant that the only way the numbers will reduce is if those people most affected are involved.
You've got the same players making the same decisions about a people that they know nothing about, and so they are designing services, improving services, but at a distance away from those people. How are you going to reduce the numbers? The numbers won't reduce. How are you going to reduce the numbers of people that enter the system at a crisis point? You can't do that because actually the people are entering the system at the crisis point because they don't know how to access the system earlier. Primarily, a lot of the reason when it comes to the African and Caribbean communities, because they don't trust you. The narratives that are in the community about the mental health services, that when you enter that, you die.
Psychotherapy grew out of a sort of white middle class European sort of environment and context. But as Britain became more diverse, psychotherapists then were forced to begin to deal with people who were different to them. You cannot really apply those same cultural ways of understanding the world to people who come from different contexts.
And we know we shall win.
That's what the government has to change if it's serious about tackling the problem. The Prime Minister has commissioned a review into the Mental Health Act, acknowledging the disproportionately high numbers of black men being detained. But it's local communities that have taken the first step, recognizing the need to take control of an issue that affects everyone.
Well, in response to that report, a spokesperson for South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust told Channel 4 News that it is strongly committed to understanding the social and economic factors that impact upon black and minority ethnic communities and are providing services that are more responsive to their needs. Well, joining me now is Jackie Dyer, co-founder of Black Thrive, a partnership for black wellbeing, and Roger Smith of the Nubian Users Forum, a group that supports minorities with mental health needs. Let's talk about solutions for a few minutes, because that film laid out the problem very, very clearly. How do you make a health service that is predominantly white and Asian, in terms of the people delivering the service, sensitive and accessible for black men?
Well, first and foremost, let me just address that by saying that it's one of the most difficult tasks to actually do, because you've got a predominantly, as you said, a white area, and we're always in a minority. And secondly, as a black person, as you saw from your own film, you'll see that you're going to be marginalized and disenfranchised straight away. You don't have to say anything or do anything. Your complexion just says it all, and straight away they look at you as being the aggressor.
So how do you take away fear of the black man?
So the way you take away the fear is basically you have to empower them and let them know that, like, that's not the only way forward for them to be heavily medicated. You have to make sure that the system like social services doesn't allow anybody to actually be put back into the system like revolving doors and go back into hospital. They have to stay with their extended families, not going to foster care from when they're young and things like that, or get involved in any sort of gangs or anything like that.
Are there any examples of what works? How you make the system more sensitive?
I think that you have to look at the system as a whole. This is a systemic issue of unconscious bias and racism in terms of attitudes that manifest themselves in behaviour. And then you have to make sure that in each of these different arenas that are making decisions about what would best respond to black people in mental health crisis, that black people are actually involved in that process. So there are good examples of that kind of work taking place, having a systematic response to a systemic issue. In Lambeth, we are working both in terms of Black Thrive, working with system leaders from the police, from health, from education, from the leaders of the council, working with community leaders, community members, carers, service users, and people who are interested in this agenda, working in an equitable way to address and look at what are the solutions that are around prevention, what are the solutions that improve access, what are the solutions that improve the patient experience. So there are ways that we are doing that, and we're doing that working in collaboration, co-production and partnership. It can be done.
We heard in the film that gentleman saying, you know, black people don't go to mental health help early because their attitude is if you go into the system, you die. How do you change that perception? How do you get people seeking help?
Well, it's one of the most hardest things to do once again, because they have lack of confidence in the police and in the system, because if you already have a stigma attached to you and a label, the only way you can combat that is to literally is to try and unite and say, well, if you have your own journeys and you try to get people into some kind of centre or whatever, if there is one, unfortunately there's lack of these centres. With the cuts and what the things the government is doing, they have a very hard place to actually go to and actually do stuff about getting the support.
Are you saying black people don't go to their GP and say, I'm feeling terrible?
Even if they do go to the GP, even if they do go to the GP, I am saying exactly that, because the GP doesn't even really understand the prognosis. They're very quick to sort of just give you just some medication, but they don't really understand the demographics, because they don't cover mental health themselves too much, really.
I think it's a different experience. The experience of African and Caribbean people within this country, as demonstrated by the race disparity unit, is data ethnicity figures, is that when you look right across the public sector, employment, housing, education, health, criminal justice system, our experience is one of being discriminated against, manifesting detention or exclusions. Our experience, and this is for decades and beyond decades because it's over hundreds of years, there's this dynamic of oppression that we experience. How can one expect any other manifestation other than crisis within our communities? Because what you have is system players that keep replicating. But
it needs to come from both sides.
But it needs to, in order to make those changes, you have to work with the people that are being oppressed, but the oppressors also need to work with those oppressed much more closely than ever they do. Normally the response is, oh, we've got a crisis, so let's look at the top-down answer. We can drop down on the people here. Actually, that does no longer work. You have to work together all along the way in a systematic kind of a way, and have the very difficult and absolutely quite frank conversations about how discrimination is undermining our ability to have good mental health and well-being in this country.
We need to apply more action. I believe that action needs to be taking place. We can talk for hours and years and centuries at holistic remedies and attending various meetings at conferences, whether it's a foundation trust or Health Watch or any other things that we do in Camden, and these are simple per se, but we need to
All right, so I guess it cut me off at the end. All right, so everybody thoughts. Shamar?
Of course, you're gonna say something to the person who came late. Personally,
it's not a right.
And I know that there's no right. I'm just trying to collect my thoughts because my ear, yeah. So, it had a good message behind it. Like, the message was overall clear, pretty easy to understand. I don't know if anybody else got it.
Okay, what's the message?
I'm still trying to piece it together. It was more like, as a Black community, we are united, so we have to be there and, like, support the community more than we already do because of all the things going on in the world right now,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else?
No, nothing else I got to add right now. That's it.
Sam.
Yes.
All right, so what were your takes on the video? What did you get from it?
Well, I guess it's proven that Black people have a lot of mental problems, and they should, I think, in my opinion, they should come together, basically what the other person said, and they should, I guess, unite and help each other through their mental problems or whatever they're going through.
Okay.
Or expressing their feelings to each other.
All right. Tyrell.
Make me last, please.
Okay, sure. I'll make you last. Tyler. All right, Tyrell, going back to you.
Jeez. Okay. He was talking about the black community and how in Britain it's usually them and the mental health issues with the cops and how we could fix it.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to get a few of your answers. So like I said, that was just a country, no, a city within Great Britain where they were focused on how like the guys, first stories, that, I hope you saw that. Again, the theme for both videos were to show that, the world portrays, mental health as they don't really talk about it as much in the black community, but it's more so talked about in the white community. But we're trying to switch that narrative and to, as Shamar and Sam mentioned, we all come together as a community and be there for each other. A simple hello. Like for instance, the first guy. If you by judging him, you would have never thought he dealt with bipolar issues. Bipolar. He was diagnosed with bipolar. Not issues, but diagnosed with bipolar. You'd have never known if he didn't tell you his story. The other guy that was like in a computer lab, I want to say, no, in the hospital. He was the reason why he was there. If you heard, he said he heard voices. So this is a real thing. However, it can be, talked about, and also it can be combated with love. If, so if Tyrell walking down the street and let's say Shamar just say, they didn't know each other, they just say, hey, Shamar just say, hey man, how you doing? That Tyrell might have wanted to do something suicidal to himself, but Shamar just being nice and just saying, hey, asking him how his day was. Simple as that. That could change his whole outcome. And as men, especially black men, we have to break the stereotype of we don't smile, we gotta look hard. Life is too short to just have a meme mug 24/7. It's okay to support each other and root each other on, and keep each other encouraged. Because as I tell y'all all the time, before I go to bed, I pray for y'all every single night. And that I don't do that because I have to. I do it because that's how much I care about every single one of y'all that steps into Young Men of Distinction. When y'all walk through these doors, y'all become like, I become in your eyes maybe a father figure, a big brother, or Tyrell, as Shamar likes to make the joke, uncle.
Uncle.
Yeah, so, which I'm accepting now.
Uncle.
So, like I said, I become the different roles that you need me to be in your life. And, so I just want y'all to take that with y'all, that, just take that message with y'all. Again, I'm proud of y'all for making it these seven weeks. Next week will be last week, and I have some. Well, I'm gonna make sure I deliver it to each one of y'all personally, and I'm gonna show y'all the goodies that y'all will receive, next week, and I will deliver them to y'all. So like I said, y'all guys be safe and I will see y'all guys next week.
Is Jacoby?
Right.
Wait,
Yes.
is the next week thing in person or like how are we gonna get the shirts and stuff?
It's gonna be virtual, but I'm gonna personally deliver y'all gifts. I'm gonna show y'all gifts, but I'm gonna deliver them personally because I'm gonna do a mock badge so y'all can see it. I'm not showing y'all's in particular. Just it's gonna be a mock.
So if you're delivering it personally, does that mean you're gonna drive all the way to down here to give me my shirt? Smart, no one's driving down there for you.
All right.
Tyrell, quiet. He thinks I'm his son.
Smart, we'll talk about that later. All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.